Your phone rings at 3 in the afternoon. You glance at the screen and see a number that looks official, maybe even familiar somehow, like something you should recognize but can't quite place. You answer because you've been taught your whole life to answer the phone when it rings, because ignoring calls feels rude, because what if it's important? What if someone needs you? What if it's the doctor's office or your daughter or something urgent that can't wait? The voice on the other end sounds professional, confident, almost reassuring in its tone. They say they're calling from Medicare. They know your name, they know your address, they know you're over 65 and enrolled in Medicare Part B. How do they know all this? It must be legitimate, right? They wouldn't have your information unless they were real. The voice tells you there's been a problem with your Medicare card, something about a security update or a systems change or new regulations that just went into effect. You need to verify your information right now, they say. Today. This afternoon. Before 5 o'clock, or your benefits might be suspended. Suspended? That word hits you like cold water. You imagine showing up at the pharmacy next week and being told your prescriptions aren't covered anymore. You imagine needing to see your doctor and discovering you have no insurance. The panic starts to rise in your chest. The voice sounds so official, so knowledgeable, so certain. They ask for your Medicare number. They ask for your Social Security number to verify your identity. They ask if you have your card in front of you. Can you read off the numbers? And here's where something inside you hesitates. Something feels wrong, but you can't quite identify what it is. The voice is professional. The information they have is accurate. The urgency feels real. But somewhere deep in your gut, a small alarm is going off, quietly, insistently, telling you to stop, to think, to question what's happening. This is the moment. This is the exact moment when you're standing at a fork in the road, and one path leads to safety while the other leads to financial devastation, identity theft, and months or even years of trying to undo the damage. Let me tell you something that's going to sound shocking, but it's absolutely true and verified by federal agencies tracking this exact problem. Last year alone, Medicare scam calls resulted in over $2 billion stolen from people just like you. $2 billion. That's not a typo. That's not an exaggeration. That's the documented, confirmed amount of money that criminals successfully extracted from older Americans by pretending to be Medicare representatives, insurance agents, government officials, or health care providers. And here's what makes it even more disturbing. Those are only the cases that were reported. Federal investigators estimate that for every scam that gets reported, there are 3 or 4 that never get reported because the victims are too embarrassed, too confused, or too scared to come forward. That means the real number could be $6 billion, $8 billion, maybe even $10 billion. Money taken from people who spent their entire lives working hard, saving carefully, trying to build a secure retirement. Money taken by criminals who use sophisticated psychological manipulation, fake caller ID systems, stolen databases of Medicare enrollees, and carefully scripted conversations designed to exploit trust, fear, and confusion. These aren't random amateurs making prank calls. These are organized criminal operations, sometimes running from overseas call centers, sometimes operating right here in the United States, employing hundreds of people whose entire job is to call seniors all day long and steal their information. The reason these scams work so effectively is because they exploit something deeply embedded in how people your age were raised to interact with the world. You were taught to be polite. You were taught to respect authority. You were taught that when someone official calls you, especially someone from the government or an insurance company or a healthcare organization, you listen carefully and you cooperate because that's what responsible citizens do. Your generation grew up in an era when institutions were generally trustworthy, when a man's word meant something, when businesses operated with at least some degree of ethical standards. You didn't grow up with constant scam calls and phishing emails and identity theft and data breaches. The world you grew up in was fundamentally different from the world that exists now. And criminals know this. They know that people over 65 are statistically more likely to answer the phone when an unknown number calls. They know you're more likely to engage in conversation rather than immediately hanging up. They know you're more likely to assume good faith rather than suspicion. They know you're more likely to feel embarrassed about admitting you do not understand something technical or bureaucratic. And they use every single one of these tendencies against you with ruthless efficiency. Here's what a typical Medicare scam call actually looks like when you break down the psychology and tactics being used. The call almost always comes during daytime hours, between 10 in the morning and 4 in the afternoon, because that's when they know you're most likely to be home and most likely to answer. The caller ID often shows a number that looks legitimate, maybe even showing up as Medicare or a local area code that matches your region, because these criminals use technology called spoofing that allows them to fake what appears on your phone screen. When you answer, the voice is immediately professional and authoritative. They don't sound nervous or hesitant. They sound like someone who does this job every day, someone who has the right to call you, someone who expects you to comply. They establish credibility first by confirming information they already know about you, your name, your address, maybe even the last 4 digits of your Social Security number or your Medicare number, because they've purchased or stolen databases containing millions of Medicare enrollees with partial information. This is a deliberate tactic. By demonstrating they know some real information about you, they bypass your initial suspicion and make you think the call must be legitimate. Then comes the urgency. They create a problem that needs immediate attention. Your Medicare card needs to be replaced. New regulations require verification. There's suspicious activity on your account. Your benefits are about to be suspended. Your prescriptions might not be covered next month. The problem is always urgent, always requiring immediate action, always threatening negative consequences if you don't comply right now. This urgency is designed to trigger panic and prevent you from thinking clearly, from taking time to verify, from calling someone to ask for advice. They want you in a state of fear and confusion where you're more likely to do what they say without questioning. The next stage is verification. They ask you to confirm your Medicare number, your Social Security number, your date of birth, your bank account information if you have automatic payments set up, maybe even your credit card number if they claim you need to pay a small processing fee for the new card. This is where the actual theft happens. The moment you give them these numbers, they have everything they need to commit Medicare fraud, steal your identity, drain your bank account, open credit cards in your name, or sell your information to other criminals. And here's the most insidious part. After you've given them the information, they'll often thank you professionally, confirm that everything is taken care of, maybe even give you a fake confirmation number, or tell you to expect something in the mail in 7 to 10 business days. They want you to hang up feeling like you did the right thing, like you solved the problem, like everything is fine. That way you won't immediately realize you've been scammed. It might be days or weeks or even months before you discover that Medicare claims have been filed in your name for services you never received, or that someone opened a credit card using your information, or that your bank account has been emptied. By then, the criminals are long gone, having moved through thousands of other calls, having stolen from dozens or hundreds of other people, operating with virtual impunity because they're difficult to track and even more difficult to prosecute. Now, let me give you some real examples because abstract statistics don't convey the actual human cost of these scams. There's a woman named Margaret, 78 years old, living in Fort Myers, Florida. She received a call that her Medicare card needed to be updated due to new federal regulations. The caller knew her full name, her address, and even mentioned her recent knee surgery, information they had obtained from a data breach at a medical billing company. Because they had this detailed information, Margaret trusted them completely. She provided her Medicare number, her Social Security number, and her bank account information when they said there was a $20 processing fee for the new card. Within 2 weeks, over $43,000 in fraudulent Medicare claims had been filed in her name for medical equipment she never received. Her bank account was drained of $8,200 through automatic withdrawals she never authorized. It took her 9 months to sort out the mess, including getting Medicare to stop trying to collect money for fraudulent claims, closing her bank account and opening a new one, freezing her credit, and dealing with collection agencies who had purchased fake debts that appeared under her name. 9 months of stress, countless phone calls, mountains of paperwork, all because of one phone call that lasted less than 5 minutes. Or consider Robert, 81 years old, from Phoenix, Arizona. He received a call from someone claiming to be with Medicare's fraud department. They told him there had been suspicious activity on his Medicare account, and they needed to verify his identity to protect him from further fraud. The irony is almost painful. They were committing fraud while claiming to protect him from fraud. Robert, who considered himself savvy and careful, thought he was doing the right thing by cooperating with what he believed was an investigation into criminal activity. He provided his Medicare number, his Social Security number, and answered detailed questions about his medical history and his doctors. Within weeks, his identity had been used to file Medicare claims in multiple states for treatments he never received, and his credit score dropped over 200 points because of credit cards opened in his name that went unpaid. The recovery process took over a year and required hiring a specialized identity theft recovery service that cost him thousands of dollars. What makes these stories particularly heartbreaking is that both Margaret and Robert did exactly what they thought they should do. They cooperated with what they believed were legitimate officials. They provided information they thought was needed to solve a problem. They trusted voices that sounded professional and knowledgeable. They were being good citizens, responsible people, trying to do the right thing. And that's exactly what the criminals were counting on. That's the entire design of the scam. Exploit trust, create urgency, bypass critical thinking, extract information, disappear. The victims aren't stupid or careless. They're normal people responding rationally to what appears to be a legitimate situation, especially when the caller has accurate information that makes the call seem real. Understanding this is crucial because it means anyone can fall for these scams if they're not specifically educated about the tactics being used and the warning signs to watch for. So now we need to talk about how to recognize these scams before you give away any information, because recognition is your first and most important line of defense. There are specific red flags that appear in almost every Medicare scam call, and once you know what to look for, they become obvious. The first and most important thing to understand is this simple fact that will protect you from the vast majority of these scams. Medicare will never call you unsolicited asking for your Medicare number, your Social Security number, or your bank information. Never. Not for any reason. Not to verify your account, not to send you a new card, not to update your records, not to protect you from fraud, not for any purpose whatsoever. Medicare only calls you if you called them first and they're returning your call, or in very specific situations where they're following up on something you initiated. If you receive a call from someone claiming to be from Medicare who you didn't call yourself, that alone tells you the call is fraudulent. It doesn't matter how official they sound. It doesn't matter what information they claim to have. It doesn't matter how urgent they say the situation is. If they called you first and they're asking for personal information, it's a scam. End the call immediately. The second major red flag is urgency combined with threats. Scammers always create artificial time pressure because they know that when people feel rushed and scared, they make decisions without thinking carefully. They'll tell you that your Medicare benefits will be suspended today unless you act immediately. They'll say this is your last chance to update your card before the deadline. They'll claim that if you don't verify your information right now, you'll lose coverage and won't be able to see your doctor or get your prescriptions filled. This is psychological manipulation at its most effective. Real Medicare situations almost never involve this kind of urgent deadline. If there's a legitimate issue with your Medicare coverage, you'll receive written notice in the mail weeks or even months before anything happens, giving you plenty of time to address the situation. Medicare doesn't operate by calling you at 3 in the afternoon and demanding immediate action or threatening to cut off your benefits within hours. That kind of pressure is always, without exception, a sign that you're talking to a criminal. not a legitimate representative. The third red flag is requests for payment. This one catches a lot of people because the amounts are often small, which makes them seem legitimate. The caller might say there's a $20 processing fee for your new Medicare card, or a $15 shipping charge, or a $30 administrative fee. They'll make it sound routine and reasonable, just a standard charge that everyone pays. Here's what you need to know. Medicare cards are always free, replacements are free, updates are free. There is never any charge for anything related to your basic Medicare card. If someone asks you to pay anything, even a small amount, even if it sounds official and reasonable, they're scamming you. The small payment serves two purposes for the criminals. First, it gives them your credit card or bank account information, which they can then use to make much larger unauthorized charges. Second, the small amount makes you less suspicious because it doesn't seem worth the trouble for a scammer to go through all this effort for $20, so you assume it must be legitimate. But they're not after your $20. They're after your account access and your personal information, which they can use to steal thousands. The fourth warning sign is when the caller asks you to confirm information that real Medicare already has. Think about this logically for a moment. If someone is truly calling from Medicare, they already have your Medicare number in their system. They already have your Social Security number. They already have your address and date of birth. Why would they need you to tell them information they already possess? Real organizations verify your identity by asking you questions only you would know, or by having you provide a reference number from previous correspondence, not by having you recite your Social Security number over the phone. When a caller says they need you to confirm your Medicare number or Social Security number for verification purposes, what they're really doing is trying to get you to give them information they don't actually have. They might have partial information from a stolen database, but they need you to fill in the missing pieces. This tactic works because it sounds reasonable. Of course, they need to verify who you are before discussing your account. But legitimate verification doesn't involve you giving out sensitive numbers over an unsolicited phone call. The fifth and perhaps most sophisticated red flag is when they have some accurate information about you that makes the call seem real. They might know your full name and address. They might mention a recent doctor visit or medication you take. They might reference a real Medicare program or a recent news story about Medicare changes. This is the tactic that fools even careful, suspicious people, because they think if the caller knows real information, they must be legitimate. Here's how this works. Criminal organizations purchase or steal databases containing Medicare enrollee information. These databases might come from data breaches at healthcare providers, pharmacies, insurance companies, or medical billing services. They might be purchased on the dark web from other criminals who specialize in stealing data. The database gives them names, addresses, ages, and sometimes partial Medicare numbers or information about medical conditions and treatments. When they call you with this information, your natural reaction is to trust them because how else would they know these details? But possessing some accurate information doesn't make them legitimate. It just makes them well-prepared criminals. Real Medicare representatives have access to your complete file and would never need to call and ask you to provide information they can see right in front of them on their computer screen. Now that you know what the warning signs look like, let's talk about exactly what you should do when you receive one of these calls, because knowing what not to do is only half the battle. You need a clear action plan that you can follow even when you're feeling stressed or uncertain. The moment you realize you might be dealing with a scam call, even if you're not completely sure, here's what you do. First, do not provide any information whatsoever. Not your name, not your address, not your Medicare number, not your Social Security number, not your bank information, nothing. Even if they claim they just need to verify one small detail, even if they say they already have the information and just need you to confirm it, even if they threaten consequences for not cooperating, you give them nothing. Just stop. The second step is to end the call. You don't need to explain yourself. You don't need to be polite. You don't owe them anything. Simply say, "I'm going to hang up now," and then hang up. Don't worry about being rude. These are criminals trying to steal from you. Your safety and financial security are infinitely more important than telephone etiquette. After you hang up, and this is critical, do not call back any number they give you. Scammers will often provide a callback number that they claim is the official Medicare line, or a direct number to reach them to resolve the issue. That number will connect you right back to the same criminal operation, possibly to a different person playing a supervisor role who will try even harder to convince you the call is legitimate. Instead, if you have any doubt at all about whether there might be a real issue with your Medicare coverage, you find the real Medicare contact information yourself. Go to the official Medicare website by typing the address directly into your browser. Don't click on any links from emails or text messages. The official website has contact information you can trust. Or look at your actual Medicare card, which has information printed on it. Or call a family member who can help you look up the correct number. The key principle here is that you locate the contact information through a trusted source that you found yourself, not through information provided by the person who called you. When you do contact the real Medicare through a number you found yourself, explain that you received a suspicious call. Ask them if there are any actual issues with your account. In the vast majority of cases, they'll tell you there's no problem whatsoever, confirming that the call you received was indeed a scam attempt. They'll note in your file that you received a suspicious call, which helps them track patterns and warn other beneficiaries. If by some chance there actually is a legitimate issue, which is extremely rare, they'll explain it to you and tell you exactly what needs to be done, usually involving written correspondence and plenty of time to respond not urgent phone demands for immediate information. This process of independently verifying any claimed problem is your absolute best defense against these scams. It takes an extra 10 or 15 minutes, but those 15 minutes can save you from months or years of identity theft consequences. Let me tell you about someone who did exactly this and saved herself from becoming a victim. Her name is Dorothy, 73 years old, from Denver, Colorado. She received a call from someone claiming to be from Medicare saying her card had been compromised and needed immediate replacement. The caller knew her name and address, which initially made her think the call might be real. But Dorothy had heard warnings about scam calls, and something about the urgency in the caller's voice made her suspicious. She told the caller she would call Medicare back herself to handle this issue. The caller tried to pressure her, saying it needed to be done right now, that she couldn't just call back later, that the system required immediate verification. That pressure confirmed Dorothy's suspicion. She simply said no thank you and hung up. Then she found the Medicare contact number on her actual Medicare card and called it herself. The real Medicare representative told her there was no problem with her card whatsoever, nothing needed to be replaced, and no one from Medicare had called her. That 5-minute verification call saved Dorothy from potentially giving away information that could have been used to steal her identity and file thousands of dollars in fraudulent Medicare claims. She felt a little silly for being worried, but the representative thanked her for being careful and reporting the suspicious call. Better to feel silly for 5 minutes than to spend the next year dealing with identity theft. Now, let's talk about what happens if you realize you've already fallen for one of these scams and provided information before you understood what was happening, because this is a situation where immediate action can limit the damage significantly. The first thing to know is that you should not feel ashamed or embarrassed. These scams are sophisticated. They're designed by professionals to bypass your defenses, and thousands of intelligent, careful people fall for them every single day. What matters now is not how it happened, but what you do next. If you gave out your Medicare number, you need to contact Medicare immediately through their official channels and report that your number has been compromised. They can flag your account for suspicious activity and alert you to any fraudulent claims filed in your name. If you gave out your Social Security number, you need to contact the Social Security Administration and report potential identity theft. You should also place a fraud alert on your credit reports with the 3 major credit bureaus. This makes it harder for criminals to open new accounts in your name. If you gave out bank account or credit card information, contact your bank or credit card company immediately and explain what happened. They can freeze your account, issue new cards with new numbers, and monitor for unauthorized charges. Time is absolutely critical here. The faster you act, the more you can prevent criminals from using your information. You should also file a report with the Federal Trade Commission, which tracks these scams and uses the reports to investigate criminal organizations and warn other potential victims. You can do this online or by phone, and you don't need to know who the criminals were or have any details beyond what happened to you. The report creates an official record that can be helpful if you need to dispute fraudulent charges or prove to creditors that you were a victim of identity theft. Additionally, consider contacting your local police department to file a report. While they may not be able to catch the specific criminals who called you, having a police report number can be valuable when dealing with banks, credit agencies, or Medicare to resolve fraudulent activity. Some people also find it helpful to tell family members or close friends what happened. This isn't about admitting fault, it's about having support and possibly having someone help you monitor your accounts and handle phone calls for a while if you're feeling overwhelmed or unsure. One of the most important things you can do to protect yourself going forward is to simply refuse to engage with unsolicited calls about Medicare, healthcare, insurance, or anything financial. Develop a simple rule for yourself. If someone calls me about Medicare, or my insurance, or my bank account, and I didn't call them first, I immediately end the call and verify independently. It doesn't matter how official they sound. It doesn't matter what they claim. It doesn't matter if they seem to have accurate information. You end the call and verify through channels you trust. This might feel rude or overly cautious at first, but it becomes easier with practice, and it's the single most effective protection you have. Real organizations that have legitimate reasons to contact you will understand if you want to call them back. They'll provide ways for you to verify their identity. They won't pressure you or threaten you or demand immediate action. They will work with your caution because legitimate businesses know that scams exist and they want you to protect yourself. Another practical step is to consider using call screening or call blocking technology. Many phone service providers now offer features that can automatically block or flag suspected scam calls. Some smartphones have built-in features that send unknown callers directly to voicemail unless they're in your contacts. While these tools aren't perfect and occasionally block legitimate calls, they significantly reduce the number of scam calls that reach you directly. You can also register your phone number with the National Do Not Call Registry, which won't stop scam calls since criminals ignore it. But it does reduce the number of legitimate marketing calls, making it easier to identify the remaining calls as potential scams. Some people find it helpful to simply let all calls from unknown numbers go to voicemail. If it's important, they'll leave a message and you can call back after verifying who they are. This approach requires adjusting your habits around answering the phone, but it eliminates the high-pressure situation of dealing with a scammer in real time. It's also valuable to stay informed about current scam tactics because criminals constantly adapt and develop new approaches. Medicare's official website has a section dedicated to fraud alerts and common scams targeting beneficiaries. Reading through these alerts periodically helps you recognize new variations on old tactics. Local senior centers, libraries, and community organizations often host presentations about scam prevention, where you can learn from experts and ask questions. Some areas have volunteer programs where trained advocates help seniors navigate Medicare issues and recognize scams. Taking advantage of these resources doesn't mean you're vulnerable or incapable. It means you're being proactive about protecting yourself in a landscape that has genuinely become more dangerous and more complex than it was when you were younger. Finally, understand that these scams succeed not because the victims are foolish, but because the tactics are genuinely sophisticated and because they exploit normal human psychology. Being polite, trusting authority, wanting to solve problems quickly, feeling confused by bureaucratic systems, worrying about losing healthcare coverage. These are all completely normal responses. Criminals study human behavior and design their scams to trigger these responses deliberately. Protecting yourself doesn't require becoming suspicious of everyone or paranoid about every phone call. It requires understanding these specific tactics, knowing the warning signs, having a clear plan for how to respond, and giving yourself permission to be cautious even if it feels awkward. Your financial security and your identity are worth protecting. Your healthcare coverage is too important to risk, and you deserve to feel safe and confident rather than vulnerable and scared. That confidence comes from knowledge, preparation, and the willingness to trust your instincts when something feels wrong. If a call makes you uncomfortable, if something doesn't add up, if you feel pressured or threatened, those feelings are telling you something important. Listen to them. End the call. Verify independently. You have nothing to lose by being careful, and everything to lose by being trusting when you shouldn't be.